Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're going to unpack the hidden physical signs and life-saving strategies for the #1 cancer killer in Japan. For over 40 years, malignant tumors have literally been the leading cause of death over there, and colorectal cancer sits right at the very top of that list. But it's not just a stagnant statistic. Those numbers are actually increasing year after year. So today, we're going to put on our medical detective hats to decode exactly why this is happening. We'll learn how to spot the body's hidden distress signals, and we're going to explore the proven ways to stop this disease dead in its tracks. All right, let's dive right into this staggering paradox. If we look at the data, the United States has a massive population of around 340 million people, while Japan has roughly 120 million. That's nearly a 2.5 times difference in population size. Plus, the standard Western diet and higher obesity rates in the US are really well-known risk factors for colorectal cancer. Yet, despite having a fraction of the population and statistically way fewer obesity-related dietary risks, Japan actually has more people developing and dying from colorectal cancer than the United States. It's a completely baffling statistic when you first hear it. Section 1. Shocking fact: Japan versus the US and the screening gap. So the core reason behind this gap basically comes down to healthcare systems and human behavior. In the US, the lack of universal healthcare means getting sick is incredibly expensive, so Americans actively seek out preventative screenings just to avoid those massive medical bills later on. In contrast, Japanese screening rates for this specific cancer remain tragically low. It's a striking example of how taking early action can fundamentally shift your odds of survival. Before we get into the warning signs, let's map out the territory really quick. The large intestine is a massive, 2-meter-long organ that maps across your entire stomach. It's the final passage for food after it travels down your esophagus, stomach, and small intestine. It actually starts on the lower right side of your abdomen, travels up, crosses over to the left, and then descends all the way down to the exit. Because it's so incredibly large and covers so much ground, cancer behaves very differently depending on exactly where it takes root in this giant 2-meter pipeline. Moving on to Section 2. Dangerous signs from the body. Reading the clues. The exact location of a tumor completely changes the type of warning signals your body's going to broadcast. Your body is incredibly communicative, if you just know how to listen to it. Here's where it gets really fascinating. When cancer develops on the right side of the large intestine, which is the early part of the tract, human anatomy sometimes allows you to physically feel a lump right from the outside of your stomach. Now, obviously, not every lump is cancer, but a firm mass on the right side is a loud warning bell that requires immediate medical investigation. On the flip side, if the cancer grows on the left side, closer to the exit, those warning signs totally change. Over there, you'd start to notice noticeably thin, deformed stools. So, why does that happen? Well, think of a tumor on the left side like a giant obstacle blocking a tunnel. As the tumor narrows the intestinal passage, the stool is basically forced to pass through an increasingly tight space. It's kind of like commuters pushing their way out of a jammed train door during rush hour. The stool gets squeezed and compressed, resulting in a distinctly thin, pencil-like shape. If things suddenly change shape and stay that way, your body is loudly telling you there's a blockage. You also absolutely have to watch out for pain. Now, we all get a stomachache every now and then, right? But what we're looking for here is persistent, localized pain. If you have a dull, continuous ache in one very specific spot, say only the lower right or lower left, and it lasts for weeks, it's absolutely time to see a gastroenterologist. If the tumor grows large enough, it can cause a total blockage, called a bowel obstruction. This acts literally like a clogged drain pipe. Waste and gas can't escape, causing extreme stomach swelling, unbearable pain, and it often requires emergency surgery to literally cut the blockage right out. Which brings us to Section 3, Amateur Blood Vessels of Cancer, How Tumors Feed. You see, to grow that large, cancer has to actively alter your body's plumbing just to survive. It constructs what doctors affectionately call amateur blood vessels to keep itself fed. The official medical term for this is neovascularization. Normally, the blood vessels your body naturally builds are robust, professional, and built to last. But cancer is always in a huge rush. To secure a food supply and expand its territory, it rapidly forces your body to build new, rogue blood vessels. And because these are so hastily constructed by the cancer, they're poorly made, they're super fragile, and they rupture incredibly easily. Honestly, just the normal friction of stool passing by is enough to break these fragile vessels and cause them to bleed. And this leaking blood, it gives us our next vital detective clue. Color is literally everything here. If a patient has stomach cancer, the bleeding happens way high up in the digestive tract. By the time that blood travels all the way down, it oxidizes and turns pitch black, resulting in black, tarry stools. But because colorectal cancer happens near the very end of the digestive line, the bleeding is totally fresh. If you see bright red blood in the bowl or on the paper, it means the bleeding happened very recently, which strongly points to an issue right there in the large intestine. Let's head into Section 4, a Japanese invention saving lives, catching the invisible. So what if this leaking blood from those amateur vessels is completely invisible to the naked eye? What if the cancer is still super small, just bleeding microscopic drops that you could never possibly see in the toilet bowl? Enter a brilliant Japanese doctor from Hirosaki University who spotted this exact blind spot. They invented the fecal occult blood test. Now, occult simply means hidden. This test was designed specifically to catch those invisible, microscopic traces of blood that shed from early-stage asymptomatic tumors. It's just a really simple at-home stool sample test that searches for the invisible breadcrumbs left behind by those easily ruptured amateur blood vessels. The impact of this simple Japanese invention is honestly nothing short of miraculous. Taking this simple screening annually after the age of 50 is scientifically proven to reduce colorectal cancer mortality by a massive 20%. It's so wildly effective that the United States Preventative Services Task Force gives it a Grade A recommendation. It's literally one of the most effective cancer screening tools mankind has ever created, turning a deadly disease into a highly treatable one. Now, you might be wondering, what if that hidden blood test actually comes back positive? Well, the next step is a colonoscopy. Doctors use a small camera to look inside the intestine, and often they aren't even looking for full-blown cancer. They're looking for adenomatous polyps. Think of these like tiny cancer babies. They're benign growths on the intestinal wall that act as precursors to cancer. A doctor can just easily snip these out during the procedure, essentially stopping cancer before it's even born. If you have these polyps, it's your body's way of warning you that your intestinal environment is highly prone to cancer, and you really need to stay vigilant. All right, Section 5, the easily missed anemia trap, a hidden red flag. There's actually a third consequence to this continuous leaking that serves as a hidden red flag, and that's unexplained anemia. It's a trap so many people fall right into, simply because the symptoms, things like dizziness, getting winded on the stairs, and just general fatigue, are so easily dismissed as just getting older or working too hard. Next time you get your annual blood test, you should actually pull up your results and check your hemoglobin levels against these World Health Organization baselines. The healthy baseline is 13 for men, 12 for women, and 11 for pregnant or elderly folks. If you have a continuous, slow leak of blood from an unseen tumor in your colon, your body is just constantly losing red blood cells. Over months and years, your hemoglobin levels will quietly drop right below these healthy thresholds. And this highlights a totally critical gender difference in medical diagnostics. Anemia in men is an urgent, blaring warning sign. While women menstruate and can naturally lose blood and experience benign anemia, men generally do not lose blood naturally. So if a man's hemoglobin suddenly drops below 13, that blood is going somewhere. It very often means there is hidden internal bleeding, and a colonoscopy should absolutely be scheduled immediately to figure out what's going on. Section 6, prevention strategies starting today, taking control. Okay, we've covered the warning signs and the tests, so now let's focus on taking control. Genetics definitely play a role here, but lifestyle choices are the major lever you can actually pull to protect your intestinal health. The scientific data is pretty crystal clear on what fuels this disease. The International Agency for Research on Cancer classifies processed meats, we're talking things like Spam, sausages, and hot dogs, as Group 1 carcinogens, meaning there is convincing evidence they cause cancer. Red meats, like beef and pork, are Group 2 carcinogens, largely due to a pigment called heme that can inflame the intestinal lining. Couple a high-meat diet with smoking, heavy alcohol consumption, and obesity, and you are basically creating the ultimate hostile environment in your gut. But here's the good news. The prevention strategy is beautifully simple. First up, shift your diet. You don't have to banish steaks forever, but just reduce the frequency of red and processed meats by swapping them out for white meat like chicken or fish. Second, once you turn 50, absolutely commit to taking that annual fecal occult blood test. It's non-invasive, it's fast, and it literally saves lives. Third, pair that with a full colonoscopy every 10 years to sweep for those cancer baby polyps we talked about. Regular exercise and maintaining a healthy weight round out the perfect defense. Colorectal cancer is actually remarkably predictable. It starts slow, it builds fragile vessels, it bleeds, and it leaves a trail of breadcrumbs, from changes in your stool to dropping hemoglobin levels. The body leaves clues, and we have the exact medical tools needed to find them early. But the choice to investigate those clues, to get the screening, and to change your diet, that's entirely yours. You now have the knowledge you need to protect yourself. The only question left is, will you take action before it's too late?